Hello and welcome back once again to Get Cooking. It's been a while, but we're back in the kitchen, and today on Get Cooking we're going to be making porcupine balls. What are porcupine balls? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the ingredients you're going to need to make porcupine balls. Alright, first item up on the list of ingredients is 1 pound of hamburger, or any other ground meat. I prefer ground beef. You'll also need 1 small to medium sized onion, some rice. I got probably just enough left to do this recipe because my mother decided to waste the majority of the bag the other day because she doesn't know how to cook rice, but try it anyway. Next up, I'm going to add some Italian style breadcrumbs, although the recipe that I'm going off of does not call for these. I'm going to add them anyway. I'm also going to add a little bit of ground Parmesan cheese, which is also not in the original recipe. I'll probably also add 1 egg just for consistency. I don't have that out on the counter. I'm going to need a jar or a can of some type of spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce. This is a 24-ounce jar. The recipe calls for a 15-ounce jar, so basically I'm going to use about 2 cups out of this jar, which will leave me some left over for later. You're also going to need some Worcestershire sauce. The recipe calls for garlic powder, but I am out of garlic powder, but I do have garlic salt out of my spice rack, so I'm going to be using that. Also calls for some celery salt, which again I happen to have just out of my spice rack. It's almost gone. Don't really use celery salt in too many things, but it calls for it, so I'm going to try it. Then some regular salt and pepper, and towards the end I'm going to dust it with a little bit of crushed parsley flakes. And as a side to the porcupine balls, we're going to be making some instant mashed potatoes. These are roasted garlic and Parmesan baby reds. So for those, all we'll need is some water. You're also going to need some water for the mixture. So now I'm going to show you how to put this all together. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is something you guys have seen me do 100 times before. We want to dice up 1 onion. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll be back to show you the rest. So you'll see a chopped up onion right about now. Alright, and there we have our chopped up onion. So now we put this aside, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, so for the next step after chopping up our onion, we want to get a large bowl, something we can fit our hands in and mix things up. And we want to add our 1 pound of ground beef into there, as well as the onions that we chopped up. All right there into the bowl. We also want to add half a cup, as you can see there, of our rice, which will probably be what's left in here. Alright, so there we have a cup of white rice. Or half a cup, sorry. And there really isn't enough left in this bag to really hold on to, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it in. As you can see, there's barely any there. A little bit extra ain't going to hurt. And then I'm going to add in some of my Italian breadcrumbs. Again, I just got a little bit of breadcrumbs left from whatever I used them on last time, and the recipe doesn't call for them, but I'm going to add them in anyway. There's approximately about half a cup left. As you can see, it's now empty. It filled up the half a cup, so good enough. Half a cup of breadcrumbs. Next up, I'm going to add in some Parmesan cheese. I'm just going to eyeball this. About that much should be good. Okay, and now we're going to add our seasonings, but honestly there's probably more than enough seasonings in those Italian seasoning breadcrumbs that I don't really need all this, but I'm going to go ahead and add them anyway just because the recipe calls for it. First thing it says is half a teaspoon, which we have right here, of our celery salt. So we got our half a teaspoon of celery salt. Next item, it says 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder, but as I said, I don't have garlic powder, so I'm going to try and use this garlic salt, although this looks like it's more salt than garlic, but whatever. Now it says 1/8 a teaspoon, which is the one we just used, of regular black pepper. As you can see there. And lastly, 1 teaspoon of salt, but since there was garlic salt, I'm only going to do half a teaspoon of salt. I think that should balance it out enough. like so. Done. Alright, and then it says add half a cup of water. Normally I probably wouldn't add water to this at all, but the main reason for the water is to activate the rice so it starts absorbing the water. And like I said, I am also going to add 1 egg, but the recipe doesn't call for the egg. And that's just to help everything kind of come together. Why did I have out 2 eggs? Because I find it easier to crack an egg against another egg than to crack it on the counter and make a mess everywhere. Alright, and now that we have all that, we're just going to mix it together like we normally would a meatloaf. So we're going to just get our hands in here. Again, I have washed my hands. Make sure you do the same before doing this. And you just want to mash everything together until it's evenly incorporated. Don't be afraid to pick it up and give it a flip to get some of that stuff that's on the bottom back to the top, so you can incorporate the other ingredients into the parts of the meat that don't already have anything incorporated. Like over here, you can see it's still heavily pink. And then on this other side, you still got all this mush. So just kind of bring everything around so you can incorporate it all better. Basically, you're just kind of going until all the egg and water is absorbed and not leaving a pool at the bottom. Again, I'm going to give it a little bit of a turn here. So basically until you have something about like that. A nice little meatloaf. Alright, so now that we have this mixed together, we can cook this one of 2 ways. You can either cook it on the stovetop in a pan, sauteing it. I prefer to cook them in the oven just because it cooks up better. So we're going to go over and preheat our oven to 350 degrees. So now our oven is preheating at 350 degrees. So now what we want to do, using our meat mixture here, is you want to grab small pinch of it and just kind of roll it up into a small little meatball. It's got a big onion on the side of it. So basically what porcupine balls are is they're meatballs with rice in them, so once it bakes up the rice expands, pops out of the edges like a little porcupine. That's why they're called porcupine balls. I don't like that giant piece of onion right there. I'll incorporate it better into the next one. Once you have your meatball, put it in a glass baking dish, just like that. Now we're going to fill this up with our meat mixture. Now the recipe says you should be able to get approximately 12 meatballs out of this. I think I usually get a little bit more. Not sure why. Last time I made it, I didn't add the breadcrumbs or the Parmesan cheese, or the egg. I followed the recipe exactly. But they were a little loose, and as you can see, these are kind of staying together a little bit better. Last time, those are big chunks of onion. Last time, like I said, they just weren't really packed all that tight, even with me rolling them like this. So that's why I added the breadcrumbs and the egg this time around, just to kind of get them to stick together a little bit more. Last time I also didn't add the onion, even though it was on the recipe. I was out of onions at the time, so I left them out. This time I probably could have chopped them up a bit better because these are kind of big. But yeah. We're just going to keep doing this until all of our mixture is used up. If you end up filling up this pan and you still have some left over, you can do a second batch or just get out a second pan. It doesn't really matter. You can also cook these in a crock pot, which is what I was going to do, but then you got to let them simmer in the crock pot for about 8 hours on low or 6 hours on high, and that's just a lot of work. I want to eat sometime tonight, not tomorrow, so we're just going to do it this way. If you want to make your meatballs a lot bigger, you can. I'm going for roughly a little bit bigger than a golf ball, but if you want to make them bigger, you can, just so they're more of a meal to one person. You just get one big meatball instead of a couple little meatballs. It's up to you. Do what you want. So I think I'm going to have just enough. I may need a little bit more space than what I got in this pan, but I'll make it work somehow. Alright, so I ended up with one extra one, so I'm actually mashing two of my smaller ones into one slightly larger one, and that works out. And there you have those. As you can see, these ones are a little bit bigger just because I was trying to use up the meat without having to dirty up another pan. I could technically mash a few more of these together, but I'm not going to. Alright, so I'm going to clean up a little bit. I'm going to set these aside. I'm going to show you how to do the next step. Okay, so now that we got our meatballs set aside, let's go ahead and mix up the next part of our recipe. Again, we want, basically, it says 15-ounce can. As you may or may not know, there is 8 ounces in a cup. 8 and 8 is 16, so basically 2 cups is about how much sauce we want. So we got our sauce opened. We're just going to fill this up. If you got a glass measuring cup that does 2 cups, go ahead and use it. There's our first one right into another. This is a new clean bowl, by the way. And then a second cup. And we have roughly about another cup left in here, so I'll pour that into a storage container and set it aside somewhere in the fridge and use it probably tomorrow when I make spaghetti or something, I don't know. And the next thing the recipe calls for is our Worcestershire sauce. And it says to use 2 teaspoons. So there's 1 teaspoon. There's another. Doesn't look like that much, so I'm going to add just one more. For those of you who don't know, I believe 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon, so basically a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And then it says to add 1 cup of water. Not quite sure why you add water to the sauce, but there you go. You could probably actually skip that step because you're going to have grease coming off the burger, which is going to liquidate the sauce anyway. But just to be safe, we'll do it the way it says. So now we're going to grab our whisk and just kind of whisk this together into a nice watery thin sauce. And that's pretty good. I don't know if you can see, it's darkened up a bit from the Worcestershire sauce, and it's thickened back up a little bit so it's not quite as watery. And that's all you have to do with that. Now we're going to set that aside for 1 second. And now we have our meatballs once again, or our porcupine balls. All you're going to do is take this sauce you just made and dump it right over the top of our balls. Give each one a nice little splashy coat. And there we have it. Now, all we gotta do is pop this in the oven. The recipe does say to cover it for the first 45 minutes, then remove the covering and bake it for an additional 15. Normally I would do this by wrapping it with foil. I don't have any foil, so I'm probably just going to place a baking sheet over top of it, like so. That way anything that bubbles up stays inside. Alright, so we're going to pop this in the oven, and then we'll see you guys in 45 minutes to take the cover off, and then let it cook a little bit longer. Alright kids, so it's been 45 minutes. So we're going to open up our oven here, and we're just going to remove our cover. If you use tin foil, go ahead, pull it out and take your tin foil off. And there you can see basically what they look like. They have swelled up. You can see the rice poking out of them and that nice bubbly sauce. So we're going to put that back in and let them cook for another 15 minutes just to brown up the tops. Actually, I completely forgot I was going to make these potatoes too, so we're going to get started on that now. So the instructions say to bring 2 cups of water per pack to a boil, so I'm going to put 4 cups of water into a saucepan on the stove and bring it up to a boil. Alright, so here we have our saucepan, 4 cups of water, and we currently have this set to high just to get it up to a boil. Once it's up to a boil, I'll be back to follow the instructions on the back of the packet, which all of you should be able to do. Hopefully this will be ready before the end of the 15 minutes when the stuff comes out of the oven. So it should be all ready to go at the same time. So I'll see you back here for the next step. Okay, so as you can see, our water is boiling now. So we're going to go ahead and turn off our heat. As it says to immediately remove it from heat once it starts boiling. And we're going to stir in both packs of potatoes, which I've went ahead and opened up both ahead of time. So we're just going to go ahead and dump both full packs right into there. Now we're just going to grab ourselves a spoon and move that off of the burner, and we're just going to, try and do this one-handed. We're just going to stir in the potatoes until it thickens. So we're just going to mix it up until we got it all incorporated like that. And then it says cover and let it stand for 5 minutes. So we're going to just place this over here on the back burner. And I don't know what I'm going to cover it with. We'll just put this pan back over top of it. Why not? That'll work. So we're going to let that sit for 5 minutes. I'm not sure how much longer is left on the porcupine balls, but we'll be back soon and I'll show you the finished product. Alright, boys and girls, that ended up working out perfectly because it's been exactly 5 minutes, and that was exactly how much longer we had on the stuff to come out of the oven. So we're going to take the lid off of our mashed potatoes. As you can see here, we're going to give them one more quick stir. Yeah, they're nice and thickened up now. I know you guys can't see that because I'm off camera. But there you go. So we're going to set those back aside for a minute. And now it's time to retrieve our porcupine balls from the oven. Ooh. I'll set them right up here, like so. And turn off our oven. And there you have it. Those are our porcupine balls. Now, since this is still bubbling, I'm going to let it rest for a few minutes just to cool down before I get into it. One thing I did notice this time around, last time I made these, the sauce was a little bit thicker than what it's appearing to be now. I'm not 100% sure if the first time I made this I put the cup of water in with the sauce. I think I just did the sauce in the Worcestershire. So if you want to leave out the cup of water, go ahead. If you want to cut it down to like half a cup of water, it'd probably be fine. I don't think I put any water in it last time because I was expecting the grease runoff from the porcupine balls themselves. But we're going to let these sit for about 5 minutes just to cool down a little bit. And then we'll be back to plate these up and we'll show you the finished product. Alright guys, so it's been 5 minutes. As you can see, these are pretty much cooled. I mean, there's still heat coming off them. They're not like room temperature or anything, but they've cooled down enough to where I can eat them. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm sure you probably can't see me, I'm going to get my plate, my little half bowl, half plate thing here. And sorry that I'm off camera, it's just kind of hard to adjust everything on the fly. Basically, I'm going to get myself a nice couple spoonfuls of my mashed potatoes. And then I'm going to get a different spoon here and get a few of these meatballs out of here. I don't know how many exactly I'm going to do. There's a tiny one there. That should be good. So I think I'm going to end up doing about 4 of them and my mashed potatoes. Now let's move over to the counter. I'm going to show you how I top these. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of salt and a tiny bit of pepper on just the mashed potatoes because the meatballs already have it in it. I'm then going to take a little bit of butter on my fork here and put that on top of my potatoes like so, just like that. Then the one seasoning I showed you earlier that I didn't do anything with yet was the parsley flakes. So we're just going to lightly dust over the top, so like that. Good enough. And the very last thing that I'm going to put on it that I forgot to tell you guys about earlier is some cheddar cheese. Normally I would probably use mozzarella because these are Italian meatballs, but I don't have any mozzarella, so just a little pinch of cheese over top of the meatballs and a little bit on the potatoes, right? And if you don't have any shredded cheese, you can dust it with a little bit of your grated Parmesan that you had earlier. And there you have our finished product. Now the heat from this will allow the cheese to melt, the butter to melt, everything else. So now I'm going to move the camera around, get situated, and then we're going to try it. Alright guys, so there you have porcupine balls. As you can see, they are right here on the counter behind me. Sorry I'm not doing the table thing anymore. It was real hard getting the angles lined up to where you guys could see me properly and see me eating and everything. And it just takes real long to set up the whole shot and everything, so I'm going to go back to just doing the standing thing. So here you can see I got a bit of the meatball. Let's pop it in our mouth and see how it tastes. Cheers. Mmm. That is a damn good meatball. I'm going to try a little bit of my potatoes now. I know these are going to be good because they're store-bought, not homemade. So, potatoes. Perfect complement to the meatballs, or the porcupine balls, whatever you want to call them. They're technically porcupine balls because they contain rice. Regular meatballs don't contain rice. But if you want to leave the rice out, make these like this. Again, it's simple meatball recipe. Like I said, you can cook these, saute them in a frying pan. I make mine in the oven. If I had more time and I wasn't starving, I probably would have thrown them in the crock pot. Basically just line the crock pot with however many meatballs you can fit in the bottom. Pour some of the sauce over top, another layer of meatballs if you have extra, a little bit more sauce over the top, and then just let them cook on low for, if you're going to be home, you let them cook on high for about 4 to 6 hours. If you're going to be gone to work or something, just set them on low, let them cook until you get home. They should be pretty close to being done. But yeah, there's different ways you can make them, but here's a quick and easy recipe if you want to know how to make meatballs. You don't have to make it with potatoes. You could make some pasta. Like I could have boiled up some extra spaghetti noodles I got or something and put these over top of that. I just like to eat them as they are with a little bit of mashed potatoes. So there you have it. That's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you guys make any of these recipes or have any other suggestions, comments below, send me pictures on Instagram, whatever, Twitter, wherever. And if you make this and you send me a picture, you'll be featured at the start of a future episode. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, hope you enjoyed it. As always, thank you guys for watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are in the description. And until next time, get cooking.